Hello everyone. We're gonna hope sound is okay today, so if it's not, let me know. So I'm Carmen, I'm one of the realism 3D artists here at Firestorm Studios, and today we'll be looking at procedural modeling again. So, hello 3D Manic, how are you? Um, we've gotten quite far with this project, and I'm kind of getting to that phase where sound is much better today. That is brilliant news. I've been having too much sound difficulties the last, well, forever basically, because it's streaming very inconsistently due to Wi-Fi troubles. But I finally got a streaming time that actually has decent Wi-Fi. So that is exciting for me because it means I can actually get a system that works. So if sound works today, I'll keep it. I do have music playing in the background there, so if it's too loud, too soft, let me know. I sometimes have it too loud because my sound as OBS is sound does not match up. So for me, it's very loud. For you guys, it's usually quiet. So yeah, let me know. Um, right, so last week I kind of did a walkthrough of how to how this project came to be. Um, where I basically shared everything I did to get where I am now. But I think before I could go through that again. So let me know if that's something you guys want to see. Then I can do a step by step through everything. But what I think I want to do firstly is not redo some of the parts. Like I've got music sounds right. That's brilliant news. Thank you. Um, I want to kind of do a quick demo of the techniques I have used in this project. So kind of go through I'd say the basic techniques because the majority of this is built the same way. So if I show you guys the techniques I used, you'll have a good idea of how we came here. Obviously, this anything procedural modeling, it's a lot of nodes, a lot of things built on top of each other. But this is going to be, let's say, a more basic level instruction of how to get here. And then, if you guys have questions, of course, feel free to ask. But without further ado, let's go through it. So just a quick overview. The majority of this is built with lines, which is a bit like a curve. At least I use it like a curve. So we'll be going over how to do that. Um, and then we'll see how far we get. Right. Okay, so again, the other thing I use a lot of this is sweeps, a lot of this is lines. Some of this is just basic extrusions, which is really fun to do procedurally. And I think I'll just take a look at some interesting notes. Now, whenever you're working on a project, there comes a time where you kind of, I don't say get bored, but get bored. And I've kind of reached that phase with this lantern. Now, will I complete it? Yes, I will. Um, but I've opened this file today and I kind of had the thought, well, what do I want to do next? And I don't quite know. So due to that, I think it's a good idea to kind of just revisit some of the techniques that we utilized. Right, so I work predominantly in a geometry. In the geometry side of Houdini, I did not do VFX. I am interested in VFX, but I just quite frankly haven't had the time to explore it. So due to that, I'm not going to be doing VFX. Right, so I'm quickly going to actually get rid of that. So I don't want to view that. I want to view this, and actually let's give it a name. What are we going to call this? Practice. No, let's call it demo. Why not? So that's going to be a demo. So quickly thinking what techniques I want to show. I want to show the technique I use for building the archways, the one where I create the roof pieces using a revolve, and we can go over booleans. That's not something I've used in this project, but it is something I use quite a lot, so we can go over that. I'll be going over, what do you call it? Basically, I like calling it a control. but it's just a null, which is blank data basically, and that you use to enter network, and you can place it in the middle one just to add a label or whatever. You can use it for a lot of things, but I do it to, let's say I have a bunch of parameters I want to be able to alter without having to go completely to the top of my network. Then I'll add null at the bottom, and I'll kind of go over those settings. So if you ever want to, good morning. How are you awake this early, Scree? This is so early for you. You should be sleeping. Without further ado, okay, so we've got our demo category. Let's do line. Lines are brilliant. Lines are fun. Lines are everything. So quick rundown for those that haven't used Houdini before. Houdini is built up of data, like any software, but this data is easier to access than it would be in Maya. The downside to this is all the data is there, you just need to activate it. So by default, a line will come with points, and that is it. And I say points, it's literally 2 points. You can see them, I've turned them on over here. You've got one in the bottom, one at the bottom. One at the top and one at the bottom. So along with there being points, there comes point numbers, which will be relevant later. But basically, all software has this. Houdini just has an easier way of visualizing it. Bottom line is all software has it. Houdini makes it easy to access. So in this case, you might not be able to see. I don't know how cleanly this is coming through stream, but we've got a 0 at the bottom and 1 at the top. Now, this isn't relevant at the moment, but it might be relevant later as we kind of go through things. So we will be working on the lantern today as well, but for just the first part, we're just going to go over the basic techniques I used to build it, because for those that haven't joined me before, obviously lantern looks very big, very complicated. It is complicated, but it's not that complicated. Right, so now I need to switch that off actually. So, line, we do not have normals. So due to the fact that we want to build this procedurally, I need normals. So to get normals, we can use something called the attribute grid. Now, what is an attribute? Attribute is data, basically. We can quickly visualize that actually. So let's do that. I'm going to split my screen top to bottom, and we are going to do a geometry spreadsheet. Now, the geometry spreadsheet is basically a place for you to easily be able to see all your data. So you'll notice px, py, pz. Now, what is that? P stands for point, so that means it's a point value, and you can see it as up here as well. You've got different categories. At the moment, we've not got much data within it. So here you'll see y position is 1 and 0. So the 0 here would be the point at the bottom, and all of this is zeroed out because it's flat in the center of the world. Then for point number 1, you'll see all 0 except for y, because y is up. So 1 is just a value of 1, because it's not flat. It's in the center of the world, but it's not flat on the ground. Right, so that's one of the parts that comes with it. It also has vertices. They not necessarily, but in this case, the top and the bottom has a point and a vertice, basically. And then primitive. So the primitive is basically the whole object. Let's say you have a cube. A cube's a primitive in Minecraft. So it's kind of like an object, let's say. So that is that. For groups, we do not have groups at the moment. Now, groups can be used in a lot of ways, and I mean a lot of ways. So I'll be going a bit over the use cases for those as we progress, but at the moment we don't need a group, so we'll skip over that for now. So, attribute create. Now, of course, If we add this, you'll notice down at the bottom here, we've got an attribute that was added, just called attribute. We have not named it yet, and the data it contains is zilch, nothing, because we've not told it what to add. It's just blank, basically. So for our name, Houdini works with names. Some things mean something, something is just indication for you. So what do I mean by that? You know how I said points are called P? Well, a normal is called N. Curve U is called curve U, etc., etc., etc. Now, Houdini automatically knows N means normal, right? But you could also give this a name that isn't an actual thing. You could just call it something, whatever you want. But then it would be more, you'll have to specify more what it's actually doing. But for the sake of the argument, let's say we're doing N, we want normal. Houdini knows N means normal. Right, so normal is usually a vector, which means it ranges from, generally speaking, 0 to 1. But it can be like, yeah, let's just say, let's keep it simple, 0 to 1. So it is, normal is the point values, so we're going to do points. You could probably do it with phases as well, but we're doing it with points. And then the value is going to be 1. Now, it looks like nothing happened. Visually, you can't see anything happening. But if you look down at the bottom here, you'll see 0 and 1 have normal information. You can see X, Y, Z, that's the orientation of the world, and both 0 and 1 now has 1, which, if we visualize 1, let's do that, you can actually see the direction the normal is facing. If I were to move this, you can see, okay, my normals are now pointing up. We can go that way. Now it's facing in that direction. I'm actually not sure what the last one will do. I can't remember, haven't used it. A lot of nothing. It just basically zeroes out. Right. If the reason I know this is because I can see down here my geometry spreadsheet, everything is zeroed out. So in this case, we do want a normal direction. So I'm just going to use the first one. Do you have to use the first one? No. Does it matter which one you use? Technically, no. I just tend to use the first one. Right, so that is your normal information sorted. Brilliant. I'm not going to visualize everything because it kind of clutters up the scene, but if I need to see it, I'll visualize it. Right, so that is normal sorted. Next thing we need is we need a form of a gradient, a mask, if you will. So that is going to be curve U. Now, curve U is difficult to describe, so I'm going to show you guys. So that's going to be in the resample. Houdini is brilliant. We've got resamples. And resamples come with a bunch of different information. If we quickly visualize the points, you'll see automatically it kind of subdivides. Now, resamples aren't ideal for geometry necessarily. It is very useful for curves, but you can, but it doesn't necessarily behave in the way you would think it would in terms of subdividing geometry. We can actually see what it does. Let's do a cube. So a cube, and then we're going to resample that. And it does technically give you points, but no edges come with those points. So you just, yeah, you get this. And if you subdivide it, it does that. So that's interesting, not what we want. So generally speaking, you will use maybe, let's say, subdivide. In this context, you would rather use subdivide than, let's say, resample. So let's do that so we can actually see the geometry. So yeah, that basically works like smooth Maya, subdivision modifier blender, I don't know, something like that. I could be wrong on the name, but more or less that. I don't use blender. At least Not the majority of the time. I have used Blender, but that was predominantly for shape keys. Or blend shapes if you use Maya. You can do them in Maya as well. I just find them slightly more user-friendly in Blender, which, blasphemy, can't believe I said that. Anyway, so we've got two things. Now you'll notice we added geometry. That's fine. But that wasn't what I said I was going to do. I said I wanted curve view. Right. So, if we scroll down, you can get a bunch of things. You can get tangent attributes, you can get distance, you can get curve U and curve numbers. In this case, we do want curve U. Now, again, it looks like nothing happened, but if we actually look down below here, you can see we are getting information. And it's going up by 0.1, so 0 is, well, point number 0 is 0.1, 0.0, sorry, and point number 1 is 0.1, and so on and so forth. Now, the one of the point number and the one on the curve view don't necessarily line up. It's usually position based. So we do what? No, that's not what I want to do. Right. I've reduced the number of segments in this case, so you'll now see that it goes 0.0 and 0.5. Hello, Smooth Spike, how are you? So this in this case does not line up because the point number is 1, the curve view is not 1. So the point is to have a gradient that I'll visualize in a second there. The point is not for the points and the curve views numbers of values to line up. Right, so they're not connected. So I'm quickly going to undo that just to get back where we were. Have I used Blender before? I have used Blender. I actually started out in Blender. That was all the way in 2022. I started out Blender, did a bunch of YouTube tutorials, did a few Udemy courses, and then I started studying at Spectrum, at which point I had to switch to Maya. Within, I don't know, probably like 2-3 weeks of Maya, because I was working in Maya for like 8 to 10 hours a day at least. So at that point, I completely forgot how to use Blender, and if I now have to open Blender, I really struggle. Even the navigation, I just can't, quite frankly. I switch it to the Maya controls, but that makes it difficult to follow tutorials in the event I do need to use Blender. For specific use cases, I do use Blender. Predominantly, a lot of my clients do rigging in Blender. So due to that, if I'm working on a character that's already been rigged, it's just simpler to work in Maya. I know well, not Maya, in Blender. I can import it into Maya, but I find rigs tend to break. You can fix them, but for some reason, if it's a Blender rig, it's not happy in Maya. The other case doesn't, the opposite doesn't really apply. What is my career? 3D artist. Yes, I'm a 3D artist. I work predominantly in realism. I do some stylized. Project I'm currently working on is almost an anime style. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys, but it is more. It's not 3D, but it's textured, very stylized, very painterly. And then they've got like a filter over the game that pixelates it a bit. So, but my style of choice is realism. I'm very happy in realism. It makes sense to me. I can find real world references, and it makes me very happy. And I really respect stylized artists because they're so creative. I'm really not. I like the technical aspect of 3D, and a lot of the time stylish is just more difficult. I'm a Blender artist, but which hard Blender or Houdini? Houdini is significantly harder. Blender is hard in the sense of you've got a lot of shortcuts and keys you need to know. Houdini is hard because there's so much information, so much you can do, but you don't necessarily know how to access it. For example, if we even just take a look at this line, in Maya, things come with normals by default. In Houdini, they don't necessarily come with normals, so I had to add that. It's all data, but Maya and Blender 3ds Max makes it very easy to access that data. And Houdini makes it more difficult, which is fine. I like that about Houdini, but it does make it daunting to learn. I don't know if you've seen the memes, but oftentimes they'll talk about learning curves for software, and they'll have kind of projection of what the learning experience is, and Houdini usually has the worst projection, lots of ups and downs, and there's so many areas to it as well. So Houdini is a bit like geometry nodes in Blender, but on steroids. So it's the same thing, but more complicated. So if you've used geometry nodes in Blender, it's similar. Right. So we've got normals, we've got curve view that I'll show you, we've got a line, we've got points, we've got everything we need. Right. So if we quickly go to the info box for this node, you'll see we've got a lot of information. We've got points, we've got primitives, we've got vertices. Points and vertices, I wouldn't say they're the same, but they're just about the same. We've got a polygon. Can't really see it. Yeah, it comes with that by default. Primitives, we've also got primitives. So primitives, a bit like object, like I mentioned before. And then we can look down here. I'm quickly going to turn this visualization off for those, and we can go to info box. Hello, don't do that. Right. I'm 18 now, so I don't know about the career so much. Can you tell me advantages and disadvantages coming through the artist? Right, so it's a bit like any career. There is advantages and disadvantages, as you mentioned. I'd say one of the disadvantages is it's hard, which can also be seen as an advantage. But art as a career is very difficult because you are turning something you really love and enjoy into a career, and oftentimes that could take the enjoyment of the process out of it. What I mean by that is if you're working for yourself and just doing art for yourself and for enjoyment, it's very fun. You do it at your own pace, you learn at your own pace, you can try things, you can explore, and that's fine, and you can just enjoy the process. When it comes to turning that into a career, that often means you are on strict timelines, strict deadlines, you have to work within strict parameters. If you're a realism artist and the project wants you to do stylized, you do stylized. You don't get a say in the sense of, well, I don't want to do stylized. Tough. The job is to do stylized. Or the rest can also be true. Now, generally speaking, you would probably be employed in the area that is your strength, but depending, I mean, job market is what it is. Sometimes you don't get a choice in the matter. So that is one of the biggest disadvantages. It's very difficult to make the switch from doing art for enjoyment to this is now a job. And that is fine, but you have to learn to find enjoyment in the process as well. For me, something that's very important to me is being efficient. Now I'm an artist, but I'm not the most creative artist out there. My creativity isn't really in the output. I mean, I get a concept, I create that concept. So although I do have creative input, it's not a lot. So where my enjoyment comes, I enjoy optimizing workflows, speeding up workflows, making sure organization is on par, all of that, which is why I enjoy Houdini a lot, because it's so, I would say it's efficient actually. It's not efficient, but it's so fun. Getting off track there. One of the advantages is you can create pretty stuff. You create pretty things all day. I would say another advantage to it is the game and film industry, at least generally speaking, is filled up with such enthusiastic, fun people. And the community is absolutely brilliant. You, if I don't know if you're part of the Firestorm Discord, but if you join up there, you'll see a link somewhere that way down below, and you'll kind of see a little snippet of what the community is like. Everyone is supportive. Of course, there's dads in it, um, so that is an aspect of it. But the people you work with make it so fun to be part of the industry. Sure, there's gatekeeping as any industry has, but it's really nice to be part of people that are, let's say, a little bit nerdy, like we all are, because, well, that's just how it is. So I'd say one of the advantages is you get to create pretty stuff, you have a community of awesome people that you can work with, you constantly learn things every day. Your job never gets boring because you're doing something different. There's always a challenge, whether that be an artistic challenge or a technical challenge. There's a challenge for everybody. I like to say that yes, 3D is creative, but it's so technical as well. Um, because not only are you dealing with a lot of software, for example, I work in Maya, I work in Houdini, Substance Painter, Marvelous Designers, ZBrush, um, Substance Designer, not just Substance Painter, um, trying to think if there's anything else. I've used SpeedTree, which is more for the foliage side. There's Unreal Engine. There's so many softwares you can learn. Granted, you don't need to learn that many softwares, but there's always a challenge, always something new to learn, whether that be a technique or a software, or maybe you're a 3D modeler, but you want to learn animation. You can do that. If you're a generalist, maybe you want to choose to specialize down the road. There's so many avenues to explore, and that makes it absolutely brilliant, and you never get bored. Because let's be honest, if you're even a little bit creative, you get bored so quickly. It's so boring doing the same thing day in and day out, and that's one of the advantages of this industry. You get to do so many things, which is, well, quite frankly, absolutely brilliant. Um, but with that comes obviously the job market is what it is. At the moment, it's kind of on a decline. Indie studios are rising, which is absolutely brilliant, makes me very happy. But your bigger companies are struggling. And there's a lot of people in the industry that is struggling to find work right now. Do I think that'll change? Yes, yes, I do. But at the moment, we're in a bit of a decline, as these things go. Which software do you suggest me to use if becoming a 3D artist? Right, that's going to be, before I continue down that route. Hi, Francia, how are you? I hope I pronounced your name somewhat correctly. I'm not very good at names. Right, which software do you suggest me to use if becoming a 3D artist? Right, I don't know if it's a controversial opinion in this regard. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Software is a tool. The principles of 3D does not change no matter what software you use. Good topology is good topology, whether you're using Maya, Blender, 3ds Max, Houdini, or any other 3D software. The process of getting there is different, but the end result should be in line with each other, in the sense of I should not be able to tell which software you used based on the outcome. Now, there's a bit of a caveat to that. Take ZBrush, for example. You're not going to sculpt a ZBrush quality character in Maya. So sure, I should be able to tell you used well, I can easily tell you didn't use Maya for sculpting, right? I can easily tell that. But I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell whether you sculpted in Blender or ZBrush. The process, the technique, it's different. But the end result should not be different. Now, when you've been in the industry a while, you kind of start to see a bit of a pattern. You start to realize, okay, for example, I can tell if somebody used a curvature mask in their textures for Substance Painter, because that just everyone can tell, right? So there is a bit of a give and a take there, but bottom line is your software doesn't matter so much. But having said that, in terms of it really just depends a bit on your goals, right? If you want to be a freelance artist, which that is a whole topic, right? But generally speaking, and this goes against what I do, use Blender, learn Blender. The reason I say this is it's free. If you are using paid software, it can really tank your profit. And I mean really, really tank your profit. Now, on the topic of Blender, if you are working for a startup, small company, a lot of the times they can't afford to pay for software, or at least not so many software. Maybe they'll pay for some Painter or ZBrush or something, but they might not pay for Maya. So in that case, Blender is better. But if you want to work for larger companies, oftentimes Maya is better. So in that sense, it really depends. If you are studying by yourself and not through a university or college or something similar, then it is better to use Blender just because it's more accessible, and if you are not earning money yet from 3D, it's hard to validate the cost of Maya, ZBrush, Substance Painter, Houdini, Marvelous Designer, whatever you may use. So it really, really depends on what your goals are. And keep in mind, right? Software is software. So if you choose, well, I want to work at X company, they use Maya, so I'm going to learn Maya. You're not limited to Maya. Yes, you might be more comfortable in Maya, but you can always, always learn another software. And in fact, I highly encourage it. Yes, specialize, but it's so fun to explore software. So bottom line is it really depends on your goals, and also not only are you looking at 3D modeling, are you looking at animation, are you looking at both? Because that'll also play a role in which software you learn. For example, anyway, not only that, but it also depends. Do you want to go into games? Do you want to go into film? What are you looking to get into? Because a lot of those things can play a role in what the best software is, at least initially. So to condense that down, the first questions you need to ask yourself firstly is, are you going to study on your own? Or are you going to study through a university, college, anything like that? So that's step one. Step two is figure out, do you want to go into games or film? That plays a role. Do you have an idea whether you want to do animation or just modeling? Do you want to do VFX? Do you want to do drawing as well? Concept art, illustration. So that will also play a role in which software is best. Another thing to think about is, let's say you want to do modeling, just modeling. Then the next question is, of course, do you want to do characters? Do you want to do environments? Do you want to do props? Do you want to do all three? Or do you not know? Now, in my case, I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do 3D. I knew I wanted to do modeling specifically. And I knew I did not want to do characters. Now there comes the problem. So yes, you can kind of go into it with the mindset of, I want to do environments. But that's not necessarily where you'll end up. Fun fact, I do characters. So I do, well, 99% characters actually. So yes, you can kind of go into this with sort of an idea of where you're going, but at the end of the day, there will be some variation to it, and there is a chance that you'll pivot. When I started studying, I said, I want to study on my own. I want to use Blender because it's open source and free. I want to do characters, but not now. I do not want to do characters. I want to do props and environments because they're fun. And I wanted to do realism. Right. Now, out of those 4 things, if I look back at my journey, the only thing that I stuck to was realism. And even now, a lot of my work is not realism. So, yes, have a plan, and that'll give you a baseline for your journey. But that's not going to give you a black and white answer. It's all a process. So what my journey was and how I kind of approached it, and I'm going very off track here. We're not doing a lot of procedural modeling, but I'm having fun talking. So feel free to tell me I need to shut up. My journey went as follows. Okay. Now I love and not love my dad for this, but when I started studying on my own, he said, great, you're going to write a pros and cons list of every single university slash college in the country and what they offer and what you like about them and what you don't like about them. And then you're also going to do the same for all the online ones. And that was my baseline for figuring out where to study. So I highly encourage that because you figure out a lot about what you like and what you don't like. But yeah, that's off track. What am I modeling? I am modeling a lantern. So if we hop back over here, we can kind of see where we're at the moment. We can also get a concept. Let's get a concept. I've not even got a Pura file open. I've not got a Pura file open. It's terrible. Let's see. That's going to be. Let's find my concept. Now my concept, full disclosure, I do not know who created it. It was probably a model at some, or it was probably a 3D model. I don't think it's a concept. But I'm using it more for inspiration than I am trying to create a one-to-one copy of it. The reason I picked it is it's absolutely brilliant for procedural modeling because there's loads of repetitive elements in it, which is absolutely perfect for this. So this is what we're working towards. The base is there. We're making progress. Now, why did I pick this? Procedural modeling on God's domain, I'll probably never touch it. I highly encourage touching it. It's so fun. It's really fun. I know it's a lot of information, but it's so fun. I'll do a quick demo in a moment to show you that yes, it's complicated, but it's also really simple. So the reason I picked this is I wanted to create something that allowed me to create all of these lanterns with the same network with some variation. But for example, these archways are all the same. The roof and the floor, it's the same. One is just flat and the other is basically a duplicate of the roof, which makes it relatively easy to do. The details on the roofs is the same. The roofs, quite frankly, are the same. The tops are the same. All of that. Now, I want it to be the same, but I wanted some flexibility. Let's say I wanted to change the shape of the roof. I wanted to be able to do that. If I wanted to change the top of this piece here, I wanted to be able to do that. If I wanted to change the shape of the archways, again, I wanted to be able to do that. Right. So that's kind of what we're working towards. I've done a lot of back and forth on this project. I used to stream at a different time because I'm a morning person, but I like doing my productive work in the morning and then streaming in the afternoon. But Wi-Fi said, no way you're doing that. Apparently everyone has their meetings in the afternoon due to that Wi-Fi tanks. So that is no longer an option. Right, so this looks very, very complicated. It's really not. The entire base of this is basically built upon lines. The archways, it's a line. The roof, it's a line. This piece on top of the roof, again a line. This piece here, it's a line. What else is a line? That's the majority of it. The archway, line, inner archway, it's a line. This piece here, it's not a line, the flower, it's actually, no, I lie. It's also a line. And then this piece here is actually not a line, it's a curve. But I'll quickly do a demo of this. So for those, I don't know who's been here and who's not, but to quickly condense this down, we started off with the line. I'm quickly going to change my view so we can actually see the line and not just the whole thing. So that's going to be on, and that's going to be off. Right, fantastic. So let's frame that. Line by default comes with points, and that's about it. From there, I've actually added normals, which you cannot actually see. So let's turn that on. That is the normals. It's just named n because n means normal, and then it's a vector. It's a point class. It's not a vertice, but well, it could be seen as a vertice, but it's not. In this case, we're adding the value to the points, and it's not a primitive, not an edge. It's a point, right? So that's vector. I could go in a tangent about the differences between vectors and floats and all that, but I'm going to spare you guys. So that's that, and then we've got a resample that subdivides curves, right? So you can use a resample on a piece of geometry, but it's not optimal. So it's best used on curve type objects. So this does two things. We've resampled it, but we've also given it a value called curve view. So you can see if I remove this, it removes it. If I turn it on, we've now got a curve view in the bottom, and that goes from 0 to 1 in like 0.1 attributes. Right. Well, amount. I gotta have to test this, but you can probably, yeah. If you increase this, you can actually get the in-between values. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. I just want it from 0 to 1. That is it. Right, so to visualize curve view is a gradient. And the reason, don't do that. The reason we want a gradient is we're going to use the gradient as a mask. So basic, now this is in color, but technically we would use it as if it's grayscale. So basically, I want 1 to be in one place, the value 1 to be in one place, and value 0 to stay, argument's sake, at origin. Let's say, right. So we've got all those values. So we want to move the geometry in the direction of the normals. Now, obviously, there's multiple ways of doing this. You can just go in, select things, grab your move tool, where that is, and move it. You can change this to points instead of primitives, and you can manually select, and you can, again, move it. Can you actually show me the move tool? No, apparently not. As you can tell, I never use these tools, quite frankly. I do it all procedurally, so I'm not used to manually selecting stuff. So it's just one of those things. It's not optimal to move things by hand in Houdini. It's not built that way. You can, don't get me wrong, you can do it that way, but it's not necessarily recommended to. And you can see we've got an edit that comes in. Edits are the enemy. You do not want edits, and you generally want to stay away from transforms, but you can use them. Right, so you've got the resample, we've got the curve view, we've got all those fun things. So we now need to remember what it's called. What is it called? That's going to be, it's not fix. What is it called? What is it called? not an attribute create. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to check on the lantern what it's called because I'm drawing a blank. I've been talking too much. That's probably the problem. So that looks like chaos. Let's turn that off. And we're going to create a search for attribute Bob. We're looking for attribute Bob. Now, attribute Bob is a bit like a network. In a network, not quite, but for the sake of the argument, it's just like, for example, there's certain things you can do at the OBJ geometry level, right? You can create a cube. You can create a cube, you can move the cube, you can scale the cube, you can do all of those things. But you can't adjust the vertices in the cube, on the cube. You can just adjust the cube itself. It's kind of like if you've used 3ds Max, there's a certain thing and I'm going to describe this very badly, but there's a certain thing you need to activate in order to edit the vertices, faces, edges. It's a sort of edit mode, if you will. Actually, this is a very good way to explain it. You know how in Blender there's an object level and there's an edit level. And you need to press tab to go into edit. Otherwise, you can just adjust basically the same things that I'm adjusting here. It's the same, right? So this is basically object versus edit. Now, so this is object level. But we are not working in object level. We're working in the next level, which is a bit like edit mode. Now, you can also add a cube in here, right? But now you actually have access to the points and the edges and the faces and all that fun stuff, right? So that's that. Now, attribute Bob is sort of the next level to that. So this allows you to go even deeper into the network, even further than edit mode, so to speak. So right now, attribute Bob is nice, and it gives you some things by default. It gives you point information, velocity, force, age, life, ID, color, UVs, normals, and so on and so forth. So if we look at our geometry spreadsheet, we know we've got point data, we've got curve view, and we've got normal. And this data is all tied to points. We've not got any groups. No groups. We'll use groups, but not now. Our primitives, we've only got one primitive, and the primitive is the entire object. So if we select, see if I select primitive is basically an object, right? So we've got one object. So that's sort of the information we have currently, and that is the information we have access to. Now, you'll notice we added curve view. Attribute Bob is an attribute Bob. Yeah, attribute Bob does not come with curve view built in. It's nice, Houdini is brilliant, and gives you all the things you'd normally use, but not everything you use as a whole, because if it gave you all the information by default, we'd have a very, very long menu to work through, and that would clutter up the scene, right? So we do not have curve view, but we do need curve view, and we can implement that in a certain way, which we will in a moment. The next thing we have is an output node. Now, what is an output node? An output node is basically saying everything that's built in here needs to go up to here. So it's like you're exporting, so to speak. Let's say you're exporting the information and utilizing it somewhere else. Right. Now, Houdini is a bit funny in the sense of your way of importing data into a new area of the file isn't so simple. It's not called the same thing here inside the attribute Bob that it is in this, let's say, edit mode versus the OBJ mode. So it's not the same all across, which is fine, but that makes it a bit difficult because you need to remember what the thing is called in each context, right? But in attribute verbs case, that is called a bind, right? We've also got a bind export. Now, why is that? That is because if we look here, we can output point information, we can output velocity, we can add force, we can output colors and normals. But if there's something else we want to output, we can't. So that in that context, you would use a bind export. So for the bind import, by default, it's just called parameter, or PARM for short, but it means parameter. And then it's set to float. And you can all have all this information. In our case, we've already have a name for the attribute we want to import, and we can look down here, and that is curview. So that is going to be curview. Very simple. Now I'm trying to remember here, but I believe that should be a vector. Possibly. I can't remember. Let's leave it at float for now. Let's leave it at float now. Now, so we want to do two things. We want a ramp, so we can shape the squiggly line, which is a bit like, not a graph, it is a bit of a graph. So let's say ramp, if I can actually type, and that is a ramp parameter. If we look at the ramp, we've got a gradient. We want it not. Do you recommend to learn Houdini from for Sims and VFX? Rebel Way. The tutorials are brilliant. They're expensive though, so that is the downside to it. In terms of YouTube, I can find out for you. Because I do know I don't specialize in VFX, right? Or simulation for that matter. I've explored some of it very, very briefly, but it's not my area of expertise. I'm predominantly a modeler. I really love doing procedural modeling in Houdini, but it's also not the thing I do in my day-to-day job. It's something I explore for my own enjoyment with the hopes of one day implementing it in my, let's say, professional career. So in part that's why I stream. It gives me excuse to explore software I really enjoy, even if I can't use it in my day-to-day life at this stage. So Rebelway is great. I've heard really, again, if you're going the university route, college route, I've heard Think Tank is absolutely brilliant for VFX type stuff. But jumping back, I do have a contact or two that does a lot of VFX. So what I can do, if you join the Firestorm Discord, I'm not sure if you're on there, you can just reach out to me, and I'll find out for you and give you that information who would be best YouTube wise. At least for a starting point. I don't know if you've done VFX before, but if you have, it'll be a good starting point. So I'll find out for you, and if you can just reach out to me there, so I can find you. Otherwise, next time I do a stream, which will be next week Tuesday at this time. So if you join then, I can give you the information then, and I can find out for you in the meantime. So you've got options. Right. So ramps. We've got a ramp. We've got color data, which is by default. So we don't want color data. We want ramp. Now, so ramp is a float, so that is fine, which also means this curview is coming in as a float data, so float is fine for this. Right, so curview goes into input, and then nothing happens because we can't visualize it yet. Then we have a brilliant thing, as I mentioned, we want to move it in the direction of the normals, which if we quickly view here, you can see the normals, absolutely brilliant and pretty. Let's do displace along normals. Houdini is brilliant. It knows we like normal, so it gives us a brilliant node, which displays long normals. Fun fact, if you actually go, let's go, where do we want to be? Tree view, no, yeah. If you go into some of these nodes, not that one actually. Forget that Ford, I'll revisit it in a moment to show you guys. But yeah, bottom line is displays long normals. The ramp goes into amount. So how much to move, and then the other thing it needs point information and normal. Normal determines distance. No, normal determines direction, sorry, not distance. And that looks very cluttered and ugly, so we'll fix that in a moment, and then we output that. And nothing happens. Do not worry. Do not worry. We'll see why it's not working in a second. Actually, it's just because we're not viewing it, but yeah, I'll demo that why it's not. It's actually so this is just Shift S. I prefer the look of these nodes. It just looks less cluttered. Right, better. Fantastic. Nothing is happening. Again, do not worry. If we jump out here, you'll see we've now got a ramp. And it moves. So that is working, which is absolutely brilliant. So it currently moves in that direction. You can also flip it, depending on what you want. Now again, this is the basis for all the archways, all the profile of the roof. It's the basis for 99% of the entire lantern, which can be viewed here. So 99% of this is built with lines. Jumping back in here to quickly look at it, we don't need to see the normals at the moment. We probably don't even need to see. Why is it showing me the points? I don't actually want to view the points. Whatever, we'll leave it as is. So now we can we have different options, right? We've got linear, we've got round. This all comes by default. Lots of options. I'm going to keep that at linear though. We can change it to a gradient if we want, and then we can look at different things like Beziers and so on and so forth. And this already looks more like, what do you want to call it? A archway, let's say. So quickly going to flip that. If we actually start building the archway shape, this is obviously all well and good, but I'm sort of noticing it's maybe too short. Now, if you were doing this in Blender or Maya, you'd kind of have to, not necessarily start over, but you'd have to manually go and select words and start moving them around. This, however, is Houdini. So you do not need to do that. You can come up here and you can go to your line and you can increase the length. Brilliant, right? So that I can change to maybe a value of 2, just so it's all pretty. Now you'll notice there's a line going down to center here. Do not worry about it. It is just the information up here, basically. So it's like, let me show you that. It's just the information that's coming from here, but if we actually just view the one at the bottom here, we cannot see it. Come on, there you go. I've broken it. There you go. Again, maybe I think, well, this does not have enough points. I want more points. I can actually resample this as well. Increase it, decrease it as I want. So that is the beauty of using Houdini. So much things you can change. I'm also noticing maybe the point distribution is not so even, so I could do another resample. Come on, don't freeze. And that'll kind of even it out if we view that one. Hello, don't do that, leave me alone. I think my mouse has just died. Wait. That's a downside of using a battery operated mouse. It dies. So just put that on charge and do that. Brilliant. Right, so if we sample that and view that, you can kind of see the difference here. That versus that. And that evens everything out. In this case, you can't do that. Don't have to. So I'm quickly going to jump out here and actually show you what's going on the other side. The point sharing is very, very distracting. I do not want it to do that. I might have to restart the software. Sometimes this just happens and it does not cooperate. But it is what it is. Alright, let's actually quickly restart that. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, too much information, too many points. I'm just quickly going to restart it so we don't have so much things going on. Let's do that one. Now, unfortunately, this isn't true for all versions of Houdini. The one I used when I initially started with 3D was quick to open. This one is not. I don't know what version I used to use, but it was not this one, and that one opened like 50 seconds max. This one takes a while. I'm again not sure why that is, but it was just one of the updates, and it's not unique to me in the sense of I initially thought it was my PC, maybe my graphics card was giving problems, maybe something was going on. No, it's not from my PC. It's apparently a universal problem. So I don't know if they're fixing it, but I hope so because it taking forever to open is not ideal for me. I do not like. I'm not the most patient person. I'm just not. So software taking a while to open is problematic. That I'll give that to Blender. Blender is absolutely brilliant for actually opening in a decent time. The same cannot be said for Maya or Houdini. Substance Painter is alright. ZBrush depends on how big the file is that you're opening. It depends, right? We've got progress. Fantastic. We've got software open. I don't know how long that was, but it felt long. Right, so what I was saying is, I'm not going to rebuild the entire network, but what I wanted to show you guys was, so this is my network for the archways. Now I know you can work like sub-networks and kind of condense these down. I would recommend it. I don't generally work that way because I like jumping back into my networks a lot. And I jump around in the project a lot because I get bored rather quickly, and oftentimes I encounter a problem that I don't immediately have the solution for, which I'll talk about in a second. But let's quickly jump back up here. So this is the exact same network I just built in the other version, which is attribute create, we've got resample, we've got attribute op, that builds the curve, and then from there we're using a mirror to mirror it. Downside of the mirror is you've usually got 2 points on top of each other. I know there's a consolidate something unshared edges and stuff that you can use. It's faulty usually. It just is. And there's what I mean by faulty is there's 2 points on top of each other here. Now, you might not be able to see it, just because, well, streaming sometimes reduces the quality of the viewport, let's say. So there is point numbers you'll be able to see here. That's a 9, over here's a 20, and then the problem we have is we've got 2 points on top of each other. They're not merged together, which means if we sweep it, it breaks, which I can actually quickly demo. So let's do sweep. And nothing happens, do not worry, it's just because it's looking for a second input. You'll notice at the top here, there's 2 dots. One would be for profile, and the other is for your curve. But it also comes with a, let's say, default curve. Right, so that is what happens. Yeah. Now this is happening for multiple reasons. The first is we've got points on top of each other. The second reason is normals. So here I'm doing a join. Now the join does two things. Firstly, it combines my edges here, right? Edges, sorry, points. It combines my points. And the second thing it's doing is it's changing my point order. Now if we look back up here, you'll notice we're going from 0 to 10, and then from 21 to 11. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. So basically it means it's going that way, and then it's jumping down here and going up again. As I said, not ideal. So what the drawing is doing, it's firstly combining the points at the top, but it's secondly going from a value from 0 to 20, and it goes 1, 2, 3, etc. to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. Again, not sure how visible this is on streams, but it's going to be a trust me situation where yeah, that is the point order. Now point order is maybe not necessarily so important for this situation specifically, possibly, but there are situations where it is important. So in this case, probably fine if we don't have the correct point order. Points need to be merged though, but yeah, right. Moving on, we've got to orient along curve. Now what does that do? It works with your normals. So if we actually view the don't freeze. Please don't freeze. It's gonna freeze. Right, so if we view that at the join point, you'll notice the normals are going that way, kind of opposite directions. Now you can change them so they both face the same direction. Maybe you want both to face to the left or both to the right, whatever. Both up, or all up, or whatever, but not ideal. In the sense of, yes, our points are joined, but if you actually go and look, if we sweep this, it's very, very broken, right? It's terrible, absolutely terrible. So for that reason, we want, what do you call it? Orient along normals. Now what that does is it actually changes the normals to flow in the same direction. Flow along the curve, if you will. So that's what that's doing. And if we actually view this with the sweep now, we've got a pretty sweep. We don't need normals for this, but yeah. Perfect, pretty. Right, so that's that. Now I've got a bunch of things here. I've got to transform and groups, and I'm not going to go through the entire run through of this. I did do an entire walkthrough of the entire network last week Friday, which is on the YouTube channel. So if you guys want to see the full breakdown of every node, more or less every node, you can watch that. But quickly finishing this section all. When I said that I built this all with curves, basically, the next part we can look at is, come on, it's a zoom in, so I can actually click on the right thing. If you look at view at the merge here, the roof is also built with a curve, but obviously we can't use a sweep for that, right? Because the sweep, it sweeps along a curve. That's not going to be a solution for the roof. So for the roof, we're working with, let me see if I can find the roof. Not the top. It's not the, well, that could be the top. So the roof, this piece on top of it, and the little ornaments are all built in the same exact way. So let's actually look at the ornaments, just because it's easier to visualize. So again, we're working with a line. Again, it's attribute create. That is then why is there group range? That's a problem with opening files you haven't opened for a while. You'll forget what things does. But I think I figured that out. So then we've got a resample, same thing, attribute create, attribute map, all that fun stuff. Pretty standard. It's the same thing we've been using this entire time. So from there we've got a revolve. Now I believe it's also called a revolve in Maya. Let's actually check that. I'm not sure about Blender. Let's also check that because I'm curious if it's called the same thing. But basically you could input a curve and then it just creates geometry around it. Not sure what's going to open first, probably Blender, but even Blender is taking a while, probably because of streaming at the moment. Let's do that. It's probably a modifier. Now for you guys that actually use Blender, you'll struggle to watch this because I'm not very good in Blender. Would it be a deformer? Probably not. Generate. It's not a rate, it's not a bevel. Video decimate, mask, multi, no. It could be solidifying. Let's see. Let's do Bezier, why not? How do you actually create a curve in Blender? This is terrible. So you guys can enjoy watching me struggle to use the software. Add Bezier. How do you add it? Do you need to be an editor? This is terrible. Absolutely awful. Oh, it's that way. It's facing that way. Let's just turn it so we can actually. How do you turn it? Can you snap this in a way? Whatever. We're working with it. Let's see if it's certified. It's not solidified. What is it called in Blender? Because in Maya, I think it's also called Revolve. Let's switch to my software of choice. Screw. It's called Screw. Let's see. It is. I think. Steps, render. Huh. It is. You were right. It is indeed. It is indeed. Thank you. Okay, so it's not very straightforward in Blender. It's called Screw. I did not know that. I learn something new every day. So in Maya, oh well, I'm working on a tablet here. My Maya does not enjoy being on a tablet. So that is going to be blend shape change. I don't think it is. It's not. Let's just add a curve. Let's start there. I have used it, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called. Let's do that. No, don't want to do that. Let's go to front viewport. It's very difficult working on the software out there. Bada bing, bada boom. We've got that. And then that is going to be a deformer. And why do I think it is actually solidify here? It's not. I was so confident. It's not gonna be any of those. It's not tension, it's not let's surface. Where's surface? So firstly, hi, lucid dreamer, menu. Menu? Oh, this is painful. Blend shape, right, Insert. Oh, wait, I got it. Revolve. It's called Revolve. Sorry, that was a gay. It is called Revolve. So I was actually correct about the naming, just wrong about the placement. So it is Revolve, and it gives you all the pretty stuff. So that is a function you can do in Maya as well. Okay, so to reiterate that was Revolve in Maya and Screw in in Blender. It's called Screw in Blender. Houdini is similar to Maya. It's also called Revolve. Same thing as you can do in any software. You can add divisions. All very fun. And then that is that. So I'm just adding a spear here. I'm not going to go too deep into this. But bottom line is it's rollable. You get this, and you've got your ornament and roof. And what else did I use to create this? The rooftop ornament thingamajig. That's the thing. That is absolute brilliant description. So you get that ornament at the top there. So, right. Moving on. The point of all this is to say that yes, procedural modeling is complicated, and if you open the file up, it looks like an absolute nightmare, right? But if you break it down, which software is okay? Wait, no, let me finish my thought, and then I'll get back to that. This entire thing is basically built with line, excluding the only thing that is not a line or curve of some sort is this top platform, bottom platform, and the pillars. The rest are all lines with variations on the line with a sweep or revolve. Which software is better? So for that, I'm going to need a tiny bit more context. So which software is better for what? Modeling, animation, texturing, sculpting. What is the context here? And I'll be able to answer that in a better way. So right, we've got our absolutely brilliant network here. We've got our lantern. I mentioned earlier something about another area I wanted to talk about, and that was specifically, okay, let's say you are building something procedurally and you get stuck. It is very easy to get stuck and hyperfixate on that problem. I spent, how many streams have I done? 5 or 6, I believe. It meant to be a lot more than that, but I've had so much problems with Wi-Fi, which I've talked about too much, that, well, I haven't done that streaming. But that's been resolved. So, oftentimes it's very easy to hyperfixate. In fact, I spent 3 streams, I believe, probably 30 minutes each stream, trying to figure out how to select every second row of faces to make these extruded pieces on the geometry. That time would have been much better spent in other areas. So, point is, no, yes, I did resolve it eventually. Not on stream though. So the point I'm trying to make here is, it is good to problem solve a problem, but sometimes it's good to leave it and get on with the job and revisit it once you have time. So, for example, I started watching tutorials, And yes, the tutorial I watched wasn't even with the intention of solving my problem, or getting a solution for how to approach this. Obviously, you can manually select the faces. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to manually select them, because I want to keep it procedural, right? So a get it done situation. Let's say you're on a job and you really need to select every second row of faces, and you do not have time to just figure this out procedurally. Manually select them. That's fine. It's a temporary solution. But I did not even do that. I just hyperfixated on this problem, and I wasted time. I could have made a lot more progress on this lantern if I had not hyperfixated on this. Um, so point is, leave it a while. Oftentimes you'll find a solution at a different time, and oftentimes an unexpected time. Yes, the answer could lie in a tutorial, but oftentimes just walking away from your computer or working on another area of the problem in that time, or another area of the project will allow you to solve it. Um, so go for a walk in the garden, go for a walk in general, drink a cup of tea, coffee, drink of choice, whatever it may be. And oftentimes just walking away or talking to somebody about the problem. Granted, most people won't understand what you're talking about in terms of Houdini, um, but go talk to somebody about it. Talk through the problem. Oftentimes, you'll have a solution by the end of it. Um, so that was kind of the situation with this. I left it, decided, well, I'm not going to try and problem solve this in streams anymore. I'm just going to leave it. It's not that big of a deal. I'll approach it at a later stage. And I have got the solution for that, which we'll take a look at in a second. Regarding which software is better for modeling. Right, now you're going to absolutely hate me for saying this, but it's going to depend. There's no one size fits all software. The software that's best will oftentimes depend on your goal. But I will also argue the software you use does not matter. Now I know that's controversial to say, and everyone will say, no, my software is best. And my Maya is my favorite software for modeling. It is. So maybe I should say Maya, but I actually won't say Maya for the reason. I've talked about this a bit earlier in the stream as well, but the software you use does not matter so much as the outcome. And what I mean by that is, if I look at your work, if I look at your topology, if I look at your UVs, if I look at anything, I should not be able to tell which software you used. So it's much more important to learn the fundamentals of 3D. What is correct topology? What should your UVs look like? Than it is to do which software you use. Software determines process. It does not determine outcome. So by that I mean, okay, there's caveats to this, right? If you use ZBrush, yeah, I can tell you're sculpted, right? I can tell you're sculpted because ZBrush is fundamentally a sculpting software. Maybe it was not what it was created for initially. So yeah, I should not be able to. Bottom line is, I should not be able to tell which software you use based on the outcome. Now, the software that's best, it will depend on your goals. Some studios do require certain software, but once you understand the fundamentals of 3D, you can learn any software. You can. And a good example of that is something I just showed and demonstrated, and that is Revolve. Yeah, it's called a different thing in Blender. It's called Screw in Blender. But the technique is the same. It's a curve. It goes around. It creates geometry based on that curve. Sweep. I don't know if it's called the same thing in Blender, but Blender has a sweep. Maya has a sweep. Houdini has a sweep. 3ds Max has a sweep. They might be called something different, but it's the same thing. Which is less complicated? I feel Blender to be complicated to start. Having used both, Blender is Yes, it's complicated. It really is complicated. But how do I put this? It's the most beginner friendly of the softwares because it has the most resources. In the sense of if you want to learn something, a technique or how to do something, 9 times out of 10, the tutorial you're going to find is for Blender. It's a lot more difficult to find information about Maya. And Houdini, we don't even talk about that. That's basically impossible. The way I learned Houdini was through somebody that already knew Houdini, and he did not give me. I did not do a course with him, and I did not learn through YouTube. I learned through somebody that did live demos in a class for me. So I learned Houdini through that. It's very, very, very difficult to learn Houdini through YouTube. I'd argue even almost impossible to. So jumping back to which is less complicated, I'd say Maya is less complicated because you do not have all the keys and shortcuts and things like that you need to learn. Of course, there's the basic things you need to know: what the key for transform, for basic navigation, stuff like that. But Maya works predominantly on drop-down menus, right? Um, in the sense of you've got your edit mesh, you've got all your tools here. There's other ways you can access them. You can access them through here, which is just spacebar, and you can go to your surfaces, etc., etc., etc. I do not use this menu though. I use the ones at the top. Maybe not the most efficient, but that's the way I prefer doing it. In Blender, these tools are a lot more difficult to access. They are there, don't get me wrong, but they are more difficult to access, in my opinion, because I'm more comfortable in Maya. So that will automatically make me more biased towards Maya. Now, to jump back and say why I say Blender is more beginner friendly than Maya is not necessarily, despite being complicated, it's more beginner friendly because it's more stable. If you have bad geometry in Blender, it's fine. If you have bad geometry in Maya, it's going to crash. If Maya's crashing 9 times out of 10, it's because there's a flaw in your geometry. You've got something non-manifold, you've got some overlapping faces, you've got bad geometry. 9 times out of 10. Now, there are exceptions to that. Sometimes it crashes just because it can. But 9 times out of 10, if Maya's crashing, you have bad geometry. Now, if you are beginning to model, beginning the process of learning modeling, you're going to have bad geometry. You are. It's just reality, nature of the beast. So for that reason, I say Blender is more user-friendly and more beginner-friendly because it's not going to crash on you. It, 9 times out of 10. I have not had much crashing with Blender excluding rendering, and that was because I had an absurd amount of polygons because I was still learning. Um, so make of that what you will. So yeah, the bottom line is that Blender is better. Regarding, let's say, more industry standard, this industry standard changes, right? But for more, another industry standard software is 3ds Max, and that is more similar to Blender. I'd say Blender is even based upon it. It's somewhere between Maya and Blender, I would say, process-wise. I found that one to be easier to learn than Maya. 3ds Max was easier for me to learn than Maya. So that is another option. But I'd say if you're just starting out, firstly you need to figure out, is this really what you want to do? If you really want to do this, by all means jump into Maya. Well, not Maya. Blender, learn the skill, and if you need to, switch over to Maya for professional reasons. I would argue it's not the best idea to pay for a year of Maya as a software, just to figure out what you like, what you don't like, just to learn the process of modeling, because it gets expensive, right? So Blender is absolutely brilliant for a starting point because it's free. You can learn what you like about modeling, what you don't like about modeling, whether this is something we want to do, whether you might want to do animation first. Blender is kind of a catch all. You can do everything in Blender. So that'll allow you to kind of figure out, is this what you want to do? And if the answer is yes, by all means, go and pay the money and learn Maya. Because for some use cases, you will need Maya depending on where you work. Because yes, software is software and it's just a process that's different. Um, it's something that's required for some studios. Not all studios will require Maya, but some will. But fun fact, a lot of indie studios now require Blender. So it's not wrong to know both. But unfortunately, even though it's complicated, Blender is often the best starting point. Just because, as I mentioned, you've got so many tutorials for it. And the community is absolutely brilliant in the sense of got all these resources. Having said that, I cannot use Blender. So I'm a bit of a contradiction. Did use Blender for a while, about 3-4 months, and then I switched over to Maya. Um, I will not say a beginner. I do architecture visualization. I use SketchUp and 3ds Max, but I wanted to get into animation. Opening Blender seems the entire tools are different. Anyhow, I'm not an animator, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. But yes, the tools are different. But the same thing kind of applies. It'll depend a lot on your goals, right? If you want to work for an indie studio, you'll have to learn Blender. A lot of indie studios use Blender just because it's cheaper and it reduces overhead cost, all that. Um, Though I have heard, now take this as a grain of salt because as these things go, it's dependent who you ask. I'll give you one answer. If you ask Heather, she might give you another. If you ask anyone else on the Firestorm team, they'll again give you another answer. For animation, how do I put this? There's another option. If you do not like doing it in Blender and you want to work in games, learn Unreal Engine. I'm pretty sure you can do animation and you can do pretty. I could be wrong now. Yeah, you can learn animation in Unreal Engine. So maybe that would be the more user-friendly way of doing it. So look into Unreal Engine as well. If you want to stay open source, free, and so on, Unreal Engine is another software that has a lot of online resources. The one to speak to you about animation probably be Efron. He'll probably be able, or yeah, he does predominantly rigging, but he does do animation as well, so he'll probably be able to give a better answer on that. So yes, but bottom line is for animation, you've got a few options. It doesn't necessarily have to be Blender. You can also use Unreal Engine. You can also use Maya. I'm not trying to think here. Maya is a more universal software in the sense of you can use it outside of games as well. You can use it for the film side as well. Now, granted, you can use Unreal Engine for the film side, but it will depend a lot on what the end product, where it's getting rendered, and all that fun stuff. Right, so let's get rid of Blender. And I'm actually going to close Maya as well. I use Blender a lot, but because I'm in concert, but I did run into a lot of problems with it. I use mostly for blocking out a scene and setting up lights, sculpting more into ZBrush, Sculptors Pro, or 3D Code. That's a brilliant way of using Blender. I know a lot of people use it to block out things. It's really nice to view things from different angles and so on and so forth for drawing purposes. I actually started out with drawing, wasn't very good at it, and moved to 3D. But for Unreal Engine, I do need to do modeling in Blender, right? Not necessarily. You can do it in Maya, you can do it in 3ds Max, you can just export it and import it into Unreal Engine. It depends a lot on what you're animating, right? So if you're animating a character, you can find one online. You don't even necessarily have to model it. I'm pretty sure Unreal Engine also has a default character, which you can use. So that'll allow you to animate in there as well. You can even animate in Houdini, fun fact. But I would not recommend. It's probably the most complicated way of actually animating. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to model in Blender. I don't think you can actually do prop modeling in Unreal Engine itself, so you will have to use a third-party software, a different software for the modeling part, whether that be, you can do it in 3ds Max, you can do it in Blender, you can do it in not Unreal Engine, you can do it in Maya, you can do it in ZBrush. You've got options, whatever you're comfortable with, basically, especially if you're only focusing on the actual animation part of it. In that case, you can kind of explore and see what you like, what you don't like. Right, so, what was I talking about before? Oh, and feel free to ask more questions. In between answering, I'll explain the actual procedural modeling side. Right, so what I was talking about before was the kind of getting stuck on a problem and leaving it for a while. And to get back to what the actual problem was, as I mentioned, I wanted to select every second, let's say column for argument's sake, of faces. So every second. Yeah, okay, yeah, the bottom line is that. So which one do I recommend? Well, let's start off by saying, do you want to go into games or do you want to go into film? Do you have a preference? Because that'll kind of change the answer a bit. So that'll be a good starting point. Right, so if we actually view the roof, no, that's not the roof. Well, it can still, oh, it can still work. So what I wanted to do, if we visualize this, we can actually see what it's doing. That's going to be film, Maya. For film, I would recommend Maya for animation, just because it's the more industry standard. If you're working for an indie studio, you might have to use Blender, but if you're sure you want to go into animation, and you want to go into film, I would say Maya is the best software for animation. At least that's the most industry standard way of doing it. Right, so what did I want to do? It's not ornament. It's not cookie. Ha, found it. Now, again, that'll depend a bit. Right, so if you're looking to learn, let's say, animation itself, like timing, how character moves, whatever, it doesn't really matter what software you use. But career-wise, I'd say Maya is your best choice for film. Just because that is the industry standard for it. So that'll be the tool used in order to get the job, so to speak. But having said that, so how is Maya? I haven't tried. I'll get into that in a second. Regarding Maya's not going to be the thing that lands you the job. You can learn how to do animation in any software. You're going to be judged by the output. But let's say the studio uses Maya, which a lot of film studios do. They'll firstly look at what everyone created, and then they'll say, okay, we've got two people, they're at equal skill levels, we use Maya. One uses Blender, one uses Maya, they're going to pick the one that has Maya. that uses Maya. So firstly, learn the skill, then worry about software. But generally speaking, industry standard for film would be Maya. So how is Maya? Haven't tried. Maya is very buggy, which is not comforting, I know. It crashes easily and it is a bit, it's not, it's old software and it comes with the problems with old software, which is the coding behind it is a cluttered mess. Having said that, it is still industry standard. Um, for animation purposes, I think Maya is still one of the strongest softwares there is. Using it, it takes some learning, but I think out of the two between Blender and Maya, Maya is the one that is easier to use. Um, because it's more user friendly. It just is. I know people say Blender is user friendly. It's not. It's absolutely chaotic to use in the sense of there's so many tools. You don't know where they are. They're difficult to find. They're not organized in a very straightforward, logical way. You can't see them, so unless you know where they are, you're stuck. Where if we take Maya, for example, I'm glad you agree. If somebody agrees with me, I'm happy. Um, if we take Maya, which I'm quickly going to open again, and we can kind of see what I'm trying to get here at here. Houdini is a bit like Blender in the sense of you also don't know where anything is, but at least in Houdini, if you press tab, you can access everything. In Blender, not necessarily. Right, so if we take a look, we've got our files, straightforward. Blender also has that. And then we've got our which edit functions. We can delete history and all that. And you've got your create and all your tools are there, all your objects are there already prepackaged for you. You've got your selection tools all together. You've got your modify tools all together. Your displays all there. You kind of see you don't know where the tools are, which to use for what. I'm unfortunately not an animator, so I won't be the best person to show you the animation tools. I kind of guess at some of them, but I won't be the best person to give you a basic rundown of all the animation tools. I have animated at a very, very basic level, but that was in Blender. It was not. It was pre-studying. It was more self-exploration, if you will. But you kind of see what I mean. Everything is labeled, you can see everything, you can just hover over it and you can kind of see what's going on, right? Which is brilliant. But in Blender, I find the tools very difficult to find. I just do. And I think that's what makes it unfriendly to me. Which again, this is all about personal opinions and personal preferences. But what I think a good starting point would be, let me actually find you a resource. Let's do that. I'm on a different screen at the moment, so bear warning for that. Let's do. Your best resources, at least initially, is going to be probably YouTube. It is just because honestly, at the beginning, you don't want to have to invest money into it, right? So I'm going to quickly send a link. How do I do that? Let's do copy. And then we're going to paste that into the chat. So this is a beginner animation tutorial specifically for Maya, and it really goes through everything. All the way from, let me quickly see, it goes through graph editor, the IK and FK, it goes through bouncing balls, it goes through everything, and it's really in depth. In fact, a lot of these tutorials, well, it's a live stream actually, So for example, one is an hour and a half long, another is an hour and 15 minutes. So it's really, really in depth. If you already know a little bit about animation, you will not have to, how do I put this? You might be able to scan through this and get the gist of it and be fine. If you're completely new to animation or Maya in general, I'd recommend probably watching the whole thing. So that is, I think, a good starting point. Have not watched it myself, but I think I did a quick scan through when I was searching for something, and I think it'll be decent. At least as a starting point, you'll have to self-explore a bit from there on out, but it'll give you a good baseline. So who you'll see in the chat, I think it'll be sent under Restreamio, just because I'm not logged in at the moment. So yeah, I actually need to check if that's visible on Twitch. I should have probably sent it in the chat with my personal account. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Right, so that is that. Jumping back to, where are we? Houdini. So, Houdini. Right now I'm visualizing the attribute. As I mentioned, this is the attribute create. And we have given it a name. Now, I didn't know for how many of you were here at the beginning of the stream, but in the beginning of the stream, when I was creating the attribute create from the line, I mentioned that Houdini has some values. All data has names, right? Sorry, jumping back there. All data has names. In Houdini, some of them are labeled like, for example, null is n, points are p, point number is pt number. They've all got these names, right? But you can also create a name that does not already have information in it. So P will always be point, but in this case, I want to create an attribute. I want a name that I can remember and know what it is. But it does not necessarily have to be one that Houdini already has or knows what it is. So this is more for my own visual reference rather than to tell Houdini what it needs to do. Before I get into the what the problem was that I wanted to resolve that I then backtracked it on. Okay, so I'm focusing here. Regarding what I'm creating a lantern, which you can view over here. This has been a long project, but the gist of it is I wanted to create, now again, this is not my work, I found it off the internet, do not know who originally created it. But I'm using this as inspiration and as an excuse to use Houdini because I wanted to build a network that allows me to create all aspects, well, all these lanterns, but using the same network, at least to some extent. Because it's all the same, excluding, well, this one has a flat bottom, and this one only has one archway rather than two stacked on top of each other. So for the rest, all the information is the same, but I wanted to go even further than that, and I wanted the ability to adjust the shape of the roof, the shape of the ornaments, the shape of the archways, everything basically. I wanted the ability to edit it, which you can do in any software, but not as procedurally as you would be able to in Houdini. So that's kind of what we're working towards. I would not be creating one-to-one, it's more inspiration. Right, so looking at this attribute create. As I mentioned, I wanted the ability to select every second edge, no, face. I am on ArtStation. I can probably send the link somewhere. Heads up, I've not updated my ArtStation in probably over a year. I need to do that, but I haven't had much time for personal projects. Just the nature of the beast. And while we're at it, I highly encourage everyone to share their art stations. This is perfect networking opportunity. So feel free to share your art station in the chat. So let's do that. Get you guys link. And if you do not have an art station, I also recommend getting an art station. Because that is a way to not only network, but it's easy way to showcase your portfolio when you're applying for jobs. Obviously, to also have a demo reel. Demo reels are brilliant, but art stations are important. Right. So getting into things here. Bottom line is wanted to select every second column of faces, and to do that, please do share, yes, so I can follow you guys. I actually need to sign in for that. Let's do that. And then to do that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of data in Houdini, right? So in this case, I want to, if we look at point numbers here, we've got 132, what is that? One, I can't actually see it. Let's take this one in, for example, that I can actually see. So we've got 144, 145, and that one is 155. So what you'll notice is one row is even numbers and another is odd. And I'm kind of going to be utilizing that. So to showcase that, so we've got, as I mentioned, we've got names. There's a little bit of coding. I'm not brilliant at coding, so I'm not going to be brilliant at explaining it, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. The at is kind of saying, look at this function, or this piece of information, if I understand correctly. Yeah, so the at is doing that. Then we've got numbers, right? So I want them to look, I want the attribute create to look at a certain number. Or all the numbers in this case, right? And then I wanted to look at only 2% of them. Now in this case, the 2% is not randomized. So due to it not being randomized, it's going to select all the even numbers and all the odd numbers, right? And this is set to integer. Now I've studied up on what the differences is. I can visualize it, I can't explain it. But bottom line is, for this function, it needs to be integer. And then what it basically does is it selects every second row. Brilliant. From there, I'm creating a group. And it's specifically group by attribute. It's not a standard group. Because we're trying to group a certain attribute, we're not trying to group everything. So if we actually look at trying split screen here, don't die, and go to our geometry inspector so we can view all our data. If we look at our attribute create, you can see on a specific, it's not supposed to be there, it's supposed to be here. It under primitives, because this is a primitive, because we want to select faces, we do not want to select vertices, because we're not trying to extrude an edge or a vertice, we're trying to extrude faces, right? So if we look at that, we can see we've got a group that is ornament, but that is for a different use case, so we're going to leave that, ignore that. But you can see we've got 0 to 1 values here. Those are primitive numbers. So you'll notice that the zeros are all even numbers and the odds are all ones, right? You can also change this. Maybe I want every fourth edge selected. So in that case, I would change that to 4. And now I've got a 1, 2, and 3, and I'm possibly 0 as well. Yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3 values here. But the second I change it to more, because we're working with a revolve with even numbers, well, if I need to stick to even numbers or in my percentage, so that would be 2, 4, 6, but I've only got X amount of edges in this, or columns, so to speak, on this object. So if I take this to 6, not 36, 6, why is it not still working? It's not supposed to be working. It's supposed to break like this. So it'll break like this. And that's just because of the number of edges, right? Because if there's, argument's sake, it's like you can only divide by X amount, right? So if you take 8, you can divide it by 4 and get 2. And so on and so forth. But if you start, you can't divide 8 by 6. Oh, you can, but you won't get an even number in. I'm very bad at explaining math. Sorry guys, I'm very bad at explaining math. But bottom line is, just due to the number of columns we've got going up and down, you can only divide by X%, right? Because that's actually what it's doing, it's dividing in a way. So bottom line is, I could do 2, I could do 4, I could possibly do 6 in this case. It's not supposed to be able to do 6, but we're not going to talk about that part. And if I do odd numbers, so what? Let's say 3. It's working again. Why is it working? When I demoed this a week ago, this function did not work. I do not know why that is. I wonder if I change the number of on the revolve. I did. It wasn't 16. That is why. Now I can actually prove my point and go to 6, and it'll probably not work. Brilliant. It's working like it was supposed to last time. So yeah, bottom line is we've got that, right? So we're going to leave it at 2 because I do want every second edge. And then I'm grouping by attribute, and if we look here, you can see we've got groups. Brilliant. And then I'm extruding by group to get that function. Now, something to note, I'm not very happy with the fact that this ornament on top is also extruding. I don't actually want that to happen. I've wanted to fix that, but I have not. It was on my to-do list, and I ended the stream before I could do it, just because I ran out of time. So yeah, that is that. I've just noticed we've also got one at the bottom here, which means I've not specified the group. Because if we look up here, I've created a thing that basically selects 1 to 2. It's a group by range, right? So basically, again, we've got point numbers. So starting point is 0 because we do have a point that is called 0, and there, well, it's called 0. That has the number 0, and then if this had, for example, 10 points, it would obviously go 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., or alternatively, possibly from the top, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. In this case, it's not the case, so that's fine. We've only got 2 points, but basically, it's going to select within that range. So we don't want the 0, we just want 1, so that is doing that. You can also specify, for example, only select every second, and so on and so forth, which means this could have potentially been used instead of the attribute create. And we can actually take a look at how we could possibly make that work. It might flop, but it's fun to explore, so let's actually do that. Let's try and see if we can make that work. Because I'm curious, because this is basically doing the same thing as a group range. So in theory, it should work. Let's see. And it would have saved me a lot of time, actually. So we're not going to be looking at this. We're going to call that. Let's just call it extrude for now. Just have something, and this is going to be a primitive. And we want the end range to be the fill amount. So that is selecting. Let's do, I don't know how many faces this has. Let's do 100. Surely it doesn't have that many faces. So you're telling me I could have used this? I could have used this. That would have been so much easier than actually coding it in. Let's actually look how many primitives we have. We've got 511. That would have been so much simpler. I could have done it with a group range. I did not have to create an attribute. Well, you learn something new every day. And this is, once again, as I mentioned earlier, they're one of those situations where if you leave a problem, oftentimes you'll find a solution at a later stage. Very easy to hyperfixate, very fun to hyperfixate. I do love hyperfixating on a problem and solving it at the end. Of course, the not solving part is not ideal. I want to solve it. But ideally, right, I want to be able to solve it at that stage, but sometimes you get so stuck on a problem that firstly you start to get negative. It's just how it is. I'm a big believer in positive and negative energy. Unfortunately, problem solving is often negative energy. Which energy, good and bad energy is kind of a case of, well, both can give you energy or steal your energy, depending. But it depends what you thrive on. Some people thrive on negative, some people thrive on positive. I'm generally a positive thriver, but when it comes to problem solving, it does give me energy. But it's also very frustrating and often counterproductive in the sense of you get hyperfixate so much on this problem that you start to waste time and you actually get tired. It's tired constantly trying new things and trying to solve the problem. Which again, it's fine. You can do that. But at some point, you'll reach a point, especially in a job situation, where it just takes too much time. And you're not getting the work done that you should be getting done. Which is not ideal, right? So in that context, it's good to be able to say, okay, I can't do this procedurally right now, so I'm going to manually select these. It gets the job done. It's not the perfect solution. Now, again, I'm a very black and white person. It's perfect or it's bad. And I don't want to do bad. I want to do good. So I want to do the perfect solution every time, but sometimes you just have to get the job done. So you manually select the faces, you get the job done, and you can revisit the later stage. But point is, sometimes you have to park the problem, leave it, come back to it at a later stage, and at that point you can fully resolve it. And oftentimes when you've taken a break, you can actually figure out how to do it in a different way. And in this case, that was the case. I've struggled with this problem from December. And I did find a solution over December break, and I found the solution and I implemented that last week. But yes, the solution works, It does work. Perfectly works. Nothing wrong with it. But it is a bit, I wouldn't say difficult, but it is, involves a bit of coding and you have to remember it. Group by range is not too difficult to remember because the node is already built to do this. It's what it's designed for. We attribute create, same outcome, different process. I personally find coding difficult and I find it difficult to remember. I'm not a coder, which is not good for procedural modeling because you do need to understand a little bit of code in order to procedurally model. But having said that, there's oftentimes a node that does it for you without the coding. And in this case, it was the group by range or group range. I think it's called, it is called a group by range. But yeah, on that note, that's going to be it for today. Hopefully next week, when am I streaming again? Next week, Tuesday, I'll be able to make a little bit more progress on the actual lantern. And yeah, that is that. What did I want to say? I'm also doing a stream on Friday, so I'm increasing my streams to twice a week because it's fun. Right. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.